Good afternoon. Thank you, everybody. And we are now back before the public with the joint committee session between our Health and Human Services and Public Safety committee sessions. We have two more items to discuss this afternoon. The first is an update based on a briefing that we received earlier this year on substance abuse treatment programs for persons in our criminal justice system. And after that, we will be discussing the prevention of and response to mass shootings, including the use of red flag laws. And I want to thank Ms. McMillan and Ms. Farag for tag teaming this important discussion this afternoon. We are joined by representatives from the Department of Health and Human Services, including Dr. Rolando Santiago, as well as I think someone's, everyone could mute, thank you. We're also joined by Director Talley, the Director of the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, Athena Morrow, the Manager of BHCS, Adult Forensic Services, Hardy Bennett, the Treatment Services Manager, Susie Malagari, Kendra Jokum, Robin Cody, Kay Beckley, and Ben Stevenson. And I will now turn it over to Ms. Farag and Ms. McMillan to walk us through this packet.
Good afternoon, council members. I did want to say Ms. Morrow is not able to be with us today, but in addition to the folks that you've already mentioned, we have Larry Stewart and Monir Khanjani from DHHS, as well as Rachel Silverman from OMB for this first item. The Joint Committee had a quick session in the spring related to a special appropriation, a supplemental appropriation for a medication-assisted treatment program that was related to state legislation. This is an important effort to address the needs of people who are in our criminal justice system with an opioid addiction. The committee did ask to come back and have a further briefing and update on that specific effort, and there are presentation slides that the department will review with you on that effort, as well as to have a little bit broader discussion about the assessment and treatment available to people who enter the criminal justice system. As you know, we have other programs such as jail addiction services and the intervention program for substance abuse, and a lot of screening and reentry services to try to help people to deal with the underlying causes why they may have touched the criminal justice system. So with that, I would turn it over, I think, to Dr. Santiago to get us started on the presentation to you and the updates.
Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you for the opportunity to do this briefing. We know how important the MAT program is, not just in this county, but across the nation. It is becoming, medication-assisted treatment is becoming a very, very important treatment modality for people who are at risk of overdosing. So it's a tremendous tool that we have. Today we're going to speak specifically about the program that is emerging in the correctional facilities, and we're at DHHS, we're very, very grateful to partner with the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation on this effort. And without further ado, I think I'm going to turn it to Hardy Bennett, who has a slide presentation, and he will update, provide an update on the program. And I think we can have questions from you, and we have a number of staff, including the staff from the Department of Corrections, who can answer questions. So Hardy.
Thank you very much, Dr. Santiago. Ms. McMillan, can you put up the PowerPoint, the HB 116 Learning Collaborative, please?
I will forward that and see if we can get it up.
And Mr. Bennett, just so you know, there may be a problem with your internet connection. That's why your video was taken off, so that hopefully will help improve it somewhat.
Thank you.
Quinn, are you able to pull up the slides that I just sent?
Sure, let me get that prepared for you right now.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So what I'm going to do is just go through this very briefly because I know we only have roughly a half hour. So this is the collaborative for MAT treatment in the jail involving both the Department of Corrections and Health and Human Services. And this is from House Bill 116, which was implemented by Montgomery County, January 1, 2020. The key goal of this is to increase the number of people on MAT in the jail. We were one of 4 jurisdictions, along with Howard County, Prince George's, and St. Mary's County, to be the pilot site to implement this initiative. Would you go to the next page, please? This is a partner agency endeavor, obviously involving corrections and health and human services. And the next page is the one after this one is the one that I really need. So on the health and human services side of business, once a offender is identified as appropriate for admission, a peer recovery specialist invites the client into treatment, gathers demographic data, and completes the GIPRA, which is a federal government data instrument. The nursing staff gathers background information and prior treatment documentation. Our doctor of our community-based program schedules an intake assessment, and the peer recovery specialist does follow up with the offender as long as the offender is in jail to try to encourage adherence and hopefully continuity of treatment upon release from the jail to the community. Would you go to the next page, please? On the HHS side of business, real quick, what we found in this time period since January of 2020 until now is that 38 clients have been served. I do want to highlight that at this time, we are only continuing clients that have already or are already in a community-based program. So we're continuing people already on MAT in the community. The goal is to extend this to people and initiate them to it. One of the barriers to that is we have not gotten the medical practitioner on board for that. That would need to be either a doctor, a psychiatrist, or a nurse practitioner. And again, that's a work in progress. So when we say that we're not taking intakes, that means that we're not initiating people onto methadone or buprenorphine or Vivitrol. Some of the other challenges are the budgetary questions. Right now, we are budgeted through the end of September, and we have submitted budget materials beyond that. And so it does look like that with the state, we will continue to operate this initiative with state funding at least until the end of June of 2022. A big part of the challenges of what we operate here is the unpredictability of transfers. Obviously, in a jail, people get suddenly released, and so you can't always have a perfect warm handoff from the jail to the community. The COVID challenges have been very difficult for us in terms of some of the hires. We have hired through our contract agency, Athena Consultants LLC is the community agency we're working with. But many times those people have only stayed a short time before they have transitioned onward. Currently, with that agency, we do have a nurse practice. Well, we have a nurse. We don't have a nurse, but we have a therapist and we have a peer specialist. We do need to hire a nurse practitioner, a nurse coordinator, and we also need to hire one other position. In terms of one of the questions that we will have as we get to the other side of COVID, and I know this is up and down as we see the data trending, one of our questions will be whether we'll be able to move or continue with virtual intakes, or whether our doc or nurse practitioner will need to see all the inmates face to face. And the last bullet here on our end does talk about the future hiring of expanded clinical team members in order us to get to full functionality. With that, I'm going to stop. On these slides, I know that a lot of this does pertain to the Department of Correction and Rehabilitation, and so I will turn this over to them so they can talk about the 2 pages and how it relates to how they're operating. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Robin Cody, and I'm the chief of our Medical and Behavioral Health Services Division with the Department of Corrections. Director Talley, did you want to say any opening remarks before I go into any specifics about MAT implementation within the jail?
Sorry, I was muted. No, it's fine, Robin. You can go ahead and start, and then if the warden needs to jump in and talk about any security measures, and then if there's some questions at the end, of course, I'm here.
Well, thank you, everybody. As Mr. Bennett described, this is an incredible partnership with our 2 agencies and could not happen without close collaboration. And there's also been impact on other partner agencies, such as the sheriffs. Now, within DOCR and the implications of this law, we are a 3-legged stool within DOCR in how we implement. So I can speak to the actual medical piece of it in terms of, on a daily basis, how my nursing team actually administers the MAT documents. But the other 2 pieces of the stool within the jail that are equally important are the management services piece of it. The members of our team that help with the budget forecasting and the journal entries required to make sure that charges are linked to the correct grant codes. And then a truly pivotal piece of this is the custody and security aspect. In the oversight of the administration of the medication to help ensure that diversion does not occur. And we had to get this program up and running with a lot of uncertainties. But as time has gone on, we've made tremendous progress in getting the infrastructure in place, having communication with all of the right players on a weekly basis for the clinical team, and then also every other week for all of the agencies to come together to discuss budget items, things beyond the clinical aspects. And COVID did throw us some curveballs, but we have adjusted, and there was some silver lining to COVID too, because it really put us in a position to implement telehealth. And the sheriffs especially were grateful, because without the telehealth visits, they were transporting our inmates to the Rollins Avenue Clinic, which did pose security concerns. And being able to facilitate those visits with Rollins Avenue via telehealth visits greatly enhanced the safety of this program. And now I'm going to turn it over to Warden Malagary to speak to, from a custody and security standpoint, the challenges with diversion.
Robin, real quick, before the warden takes over, can you just talk about how we identify those that are coming in for the MAT program and what you do to confirm before we set someone up for admission into the program?
Absolutely. Thank you. So every new intake that has been committed to DOCR, they have a nursing assessment done down at Seven Locks MCDC. And we use a tool called the SBIRT to screen every new intake. And there are screening questions to determine previous substance use. And it is through this screening tool that's used on every new intake that people who are either potential candidates for MAT or are actually participating in an MAT program are identified. And we have a process in place that when we fill out this SBIRT, a copy also goes over to our MAT partners with HHS. When someone identifies on intake that they are part of a community-based program, those are our candidates right now. And those are the ones that we are currently offering MAT continuation to. We then have a process in place where we need to get a release of information to be able to validate their participation in a community program. That does pose a problem and challenge because, as you're aware, in a jail, people come into our system 24/7, all hours of the day and night. Many community MAT programs have limited hours of operations, often very early in the morning and for only a small portion of the day, and not necessarily on the weekend. And we have a responsibility to validate that someone is in a program before we can then do the continuation. So this is one of the challenges that we face in the program. But we do all the initial record gathering, the validation of participation in a program. We have a process to then get all of this information over to our HHS partners. And then from there, they take the case and get everything set up in terms of the initial visits and their team taking over and getting the MAT continuation rolling once they're incarcerated. And we'll answer questions that come up about the specifics regarding day-to-day operations of the program. But I did want to make sure there was an opportunity to speak to some of the risks for diversion and the need for close custody and security oversight. And I will pass the torch to the warden since she can speak to that best.
Okay, so for the custody and security piece, I have to echo previous comments in that it's truly a partnership between our custody and security and our medical staff. to carry this off and be successful. What happens is one, maybe two, maybe 3 times a day, depending on the type of medication given, and depending on the orders, we have to bring these individuals down to the medical section. Based on COVID challenges, we can't bring them down and put them in cells together. We have to separate by housing units. So right off the bat, it takes twice as long as it ordinarily would to bring an entire group down and in quick succession. So we have a medical post that's manned by a correctional officer, but it's not always a 2-man post. Quite honestly, even a 2-man post is not enough to provide the oversight that is needed to ensure that these drugs are not diverted inside the facility. Right? So what the director has approved is that any time we bring Matt down, we also assign a 3rd officer down there. That period of time that medication is being given to particular inmates who have been prescribed it. So that officer's main job and only job is to provide the supervision of those particular inmates for that 3-minute period or whatever is required based on the type of medication. That's almost a one-on-one observation that's required to be sure that medication isn't diverted and hidden. So that's the manpower that we have had. What we did was we provided a very good training video for our staff when we first started this. It was a best practice video done by another facility. And so we trained the majority of our staff to be able to what to look for, how to do it. And that has continued onward. And I think we get better at it probably every day. We get more confident about what we're doing because this was brand new for our staff to have to stand, watch medication being given to a particular inmate, and then watch them for 20 minutes to be sure they don't cheek it, get it out, put it behind their ear, stick it in their pocket. Okay? Because these strips are worth big time back in the pods if they're giving them Suboxone strips. So I'm very proud to say that I think our staff adapted. Again, as I said, so much better. We have 1 known incident where an individual actually did not get out of the medical unit with it, but we caught him with it. And so we were able to confiscate that. We have several suspicions of particular inmates. So what we do is we up our observation period and the degree of observation on those particular individuals because we had a couple of suspicions early on that there were a couple of individuals that might be trying to take advantage of this program. All right. So I think we've had really great success working very closely with our medical staff. But again, it is additional manpower that's required, that 1 or 2 or maybe sometimes 3 times a day. Normally it's 1 or 2 to observe those inmates closely as they go through and as each one of them is given their medication. And as they are watched and observed to be sure before they're sent back to their living area that they have obviously thoroughly ingested the drug. There's nothing to take back to the pod to sell or use later. And we also have incorporated a thorough search by staff members before that individual is sent back to their pod. That was something we added because quite frankly, we didn't actually incorporate that in our initial practice. So we've modified it as we've been doing this for the past months, and I think that we've gotten far better at it, but it is always a custody and security concern when you are issuing individuals drugs of this type, all right, and then sending them back to their living areas, unless you're sure that they have completely ingested it because it becomes a real security concern.
Questions? Thank you, Warden Malgary. So, and we don't really have too much more to add. I know that we also wanted to talk about I know HHS wanted to talk about the other substance abuse programs that are available inside the jail that we are partnership with HHS, such as the Jail Addiction Service Program.
Dr. Santiago.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, Hardy, would your staff, you and your staff want to talk about some of the other programs?
Absolutely. Let's, Monir, Ms. Khanjani, would you speak about jazz, please?
Yes, sir. Hello, I'm Monir Khanjani, Clinical Supervisor of the Jail Addiction Services Program, which is
located at the Montgomery County Correctional Facility. We are a CARF accredited and COMAR accredited through the state program, which we have to follow all the guidelines very carefully with documentation and service to the to the inmates. Our team consists of 5 therapists, 1 assistant, 1 care coordinator who engages them in the jail and also follows them in the community, which is a big piece for us. However, that piece requires the inmate willing to return his calls and be willing to see him. And also we have a peer specialist position. Our goal in regards to the MAT program is, of course, the pandemic has in some levels interfered with that because of safety and limited movement at this time. But our goal is anybody that is identified for the MAT program at MCCF, for them to be fast-tracked and move into our housing unit. We have a separate housing unit for men and a housing unit for females. On the men's side, our capacity is 64 inmates, and on the females, it's 32. We operate under the intensive partial hospitalization intensive outpatient program. And we offer, it's primarily a group and therapeutic community modality with therapists running a minimum of 1 group, and some days 2 groups a week. So it's 5 to 6 groups a week plus individual. We do a comprehensive assessment and monthly treatment plan updates with assignments and engagement in the community and how they could better socialize and connect to the system. I don't want to talk too much. If there's
thank you. That's really helpful. Is the program's voluntary? Is that correct?
Yes, sir. It is voluntary. However, when corrections does during their initial orientation, teaches them about the program, and also a lot of them, the attorneys and the judges encourages the inmates to come to our program. And of course, both our care coordinator and peer specialists go in the community as well, in the general population, and try to engage the inmates and encourage them to come to the program.
I know the peer-to-peer model works particularly well with programs like this. Is that utilized or accessed in this case?
Yes. So our peer specialist and care coordinator are both individuals in recovery and are very open about it, very connected in the community. And so we do, and also prior to the pandemic, we have always volunteers. Every night they would have an AA or NA meeting with a peer. However, of course, all of that had to come to a halt because of the pandemic. But we do encourage peer-to-peer. Even during holidays or any special event, we do try to invite peers from the community who have a recovery background to work with the inmates and encourage and support them and connect them.
Great. And then follow up when an inmate is released. What does that look like, so that we identify other treatment programs once they go back to the general population? How is the follow-up done?
So both corrections and HHS have a team of reentry. Primarily, we have 2 clinicians from our sister program, CATS, who's housed at MCCF. They're both master level clinicians, but they do clinical case management. So upon admission and assessment, as we identify reentry needs, and of course, treatment is always on top of the list, we connect to them. So everybody who is a Montgomery County resident, HHS Reentry works with. Whoever is not a Montgomery County resident, Corrections Reentry work with. So we have very close collaboration and ongoing communication with both reentry staff.
And then I guess my final question for now, and I know Councilmember Rice has some questions, and then we're going to try to keep this tight to be able to move on to our next item. But, we're seeing an upward trend of substance abuse issues across the country. I assume that is probably also the case in the inmates that we're seeing here. But how do we track that data? Do we track that at a macro level, just for curiosity's sake? And also, I'm sure that helps dictate how we deploy services and programs and where we need greater investments. But are we seeing a higher incidence of folks with substance abuse issues coming into the system?
That is a difficult question to answer because 90% of our inmates, it's self-report. So initially, we respond by self-report. So if they're in denial or they say, I don't have a substance abuse issue, or they're minimizing, it's difficult to identify. The only way, and Robin probably could speak to it better than me, that we could identify upon their entry is if they're in withdrawal or they're heavily intoxicated or under the influence. Otherwise, it would be highly self-report.
Thank you, Monir. That's a really good point. And one great byproduct of the MAT program and the fact that we're doing an SBIRT on every intake is starting to give us data in a formal process that didn't exist before. And as we as an agency are now moving towards an electronic health record, our ability to both track and report on diagnoses and data will continue to improve. So both House Bill 116 requiring the implementation of an MAT program as we move from just continuations to initiations, and as we have implementation of an electronic health record, we will have much greater ability to both track data and predict and monitor trends.
Thank you. That's helpful. Councilmember Rice.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And so, Ms. Khanjani, you actually said something that was intriguing to me, because you said that optional and sometimes courts recommend. And so it gives me sort of this kind of purview to what happens with drug court, to where it's actually mandated that you go through this program, and therefore then your sentence is reduced. And are we looking at something along those lines of getting to that point where JAS can be a court mandated program that would actually help to alleviate some of the challenges we may have with drug recidivism?
That's a question of above and beyond. It would be up to courts, perhaps, and maybe Chief Santiago could respond to that. Also, the other piece is we would love for the ones who are on probation from the court and are required, the non-drug court, who follow treatment, they respond more to our care coordinator, and they do follow treatment. But unfortunately, with this population, the motivation tremendously decreases once they don't have a legal commitment to follow treatment.
Absolutely.
Even though I'd love to see, especially our minority youth who end up going to DOC to prison, that is a heart-wrenching sight for me. That's the toughest part of my job as I observe it. If we could provide more treatment for them instead of prison time, because they go there and they learn to become real criminals, as opposed to getting the treatment and mentoring and support and follow up in the community.
Ms. Khanjani, I couldn't agree with you more. And so, Mr. Chair, we don't need to belabor this at this point, but I do think that's something we may want to look at as a strategy for advocacy in terms of how we might be able to try and work with our court system to create some kind of model. Certainly something that I'd like to see also that we might be able to incorporate in other jurisdictions as well. I mean, if this is something that works and certainly is beneficial, we can be an example of something we can share with folks all across the country. So just my thoughts there.
It's a very, very good thought and a very good point. Ms. Frog and Ms. McMillan, it'd be good if we followed up on that. I think that's a great recommendation.
Councilman Rice, I just wanted to insert, if I could. One of the things that we have the ability to do at our community-based program, the Pre-Release Center, is For those who are hesitant, everyone doesn't want to admit that they have an issue with substance abuse. There's a denial. I'm too young. This doesn't have control over me. And so one of the things when pre-release center is open, that we do mandate that people complete JAS before they come to the pre-release center. That's the carrot we use. If we believe that there's a substance abuse issue that's here, that's identified, and you're working on it, whether you be drug court, you've come in several times, you've been in our program several times, and you still aren't getting it, we will say you must complete a certain portion of JAS or complete it in its entirety before you come to the pre-release center. And I know sometimes when you do that, and Chief Stevenson can jump in if he needs to, that, are you getting the buy-in from the person if you're forcing them to do it? I guess we believe that the benefit outweighs that part of it, because sometimes you fake on something, as the saying goes, and you fake on something real. At every opportunity to educate and to give you some tools, we're going to take advantage of that. And so sometimes we get pushback where people want individuals transferred sooner to the pre-release center. And we're saying, look, this person is doing this over and over again. We need to get your attention. You're going to do JAS or you aren't coming. And so just for everybody on the call, if you get those calls and you're, I'm speaking to the judges or anyone else, yes, we did tell them that. Because we want you to get it. We don't want you to, continue to go down this path of self-destruction and possibly, lose your life. And so we are trying to, if mandating programs are what we need to do, we're going to do it.
And the other thing, thank you. I wanted to kind of piggyback on what Director Talley is saying. The buy-in, one thing I do want to show off about my team is all of our clinicians are high-level master clinicians, and our approach is trauma-informed. So even with the most resistant client, if they're there long enough, we're able to break into and plant some seeds and connect to them. And I have letters from them. I have one of our chairmen who ended up staying 18 months in JAS. He regularly writes to us and communicates with me and James about his progress and continuing to say, because of the length of stay, we had time to break him and work with him, with his trauma, with his resistance, and we were able to engage him. So our team is able to do that. Sometimes we don't have enough time with them because they get bonded out or released. So that is one of our tough challenges. But if you have the time, we're pretty confident with most of them we're able to do some good work.
Right. Well, this has been an excellent presentation. Thank you so much, Director Talley. Thank you, Dr. Santiago. Thank you to this remarkable team. Clearly, this is something that is important and further evidence that our correctional system is among the most sophisticated and multi-layered in this country. And it's not just morally the right thing to do for us to do that, but also in the best interest of all of our residents, especially our constituents themselves who find themselves in our criminal justice system. So thank you very much, and we appreciate your leadership and hard work. We will now move on to the next item on our agenda, and we are joined also by a very distinguished panel of leaders in our community. I requested this joint session after seeing what just felt like such a repetitive, horrific images on television. We have all read about, we have all seen mass shootings across the country, but there is undeniably a spike in gun violence across this entire country. And specifically with regards to mass shootings, they're up 73%. And the definition of mass shootings is not common among every jurisdiction, but the most commonly used is an incident in which 4 or more people have perished. And we have also, there was a recent report in Bethesda Magazine that there's been a 40% rise in gun sales here in Montgomery County. And we also know through other work sessions that the behavioral health needs of our county residents have grown exponentially as well. And so after we read about or see one of these horrific incidents, I, for one, always wonder, what happened? Was there anything that could have been done to prevent the incident from happening in the first place? Because although these shootings represent a small percentage of overall gun violence across this country, their impact has a devastating ripple effect, certainly for the families most directly impacted by communities in general. And as we also know, there is no safe place anymore. We've had places of worship, schools, malls, movie theaters, workplaces, you name it, that have all been victim to this. And so the purpose of this session is to find out a little bit more about the steps that we're taking here in Montgomery County to prevent incidents like this from happening. Also to find out if there's anything more that we can and should be doing, acknowledging that this is a complex issue that involves a myriad of different agencies, federal law, state law, and a lot of which is out of the county's control. But I know that there's as much as we can do to control what we can control. There's always more that we can do. So thank you all so much for joining us this afternoon. We are joined this afternoon by Chief Jones. We're also joined by, actually, before I do that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague and friend, Councilmember Katz, the chair of our Public Safety Committee, as this is a joint session. So Chairman Katz.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I'm going to be very brief. And I know you're going to introduce others, but I did want to take a special moment to recognize that we do have the former administrative circuit court judge, Bob Greenberg, here. And I saw him before. He's been jumping around on my screen. I see him. He is now retired. But if we could, we should give him a round of applause, please, for all of his hard work. And thank you very much, Judge Greenberg, for everything you have done. I know that you will continue to be involved. And we did want to welcome the new administrative judge, Judge Jim Bonifant. And he's here as well somewhere. He was. There he is.
Right here. It's good to see you.
And I know it's been a while, just like for me, that someone has called you the new guy, but we do appreciate that. And I did want to also recognize District Court Administrative Judge Sherry Koch is here as well, and we thank her for all of her hard work. Thank you. And on this one topic, especially on many topics, but I don't see him on the call, but Sheriff Darren Popkin has been deeply involved in many of these issues from a legislative side from the state. And we certainly thank him for saving lives along the way. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to you, Mr. Chairs, because I know we're running a little late, hard to believe, but we're running a little late today. Thank you.
Thank you. We are also joined today by Chief Deputy Maxwell from the Sheriff's Office, Dr. Earl Stoddard, now the Acting Assistant Chief Administrative Officer, Assistant Chief Dinesh Patel, Assistant Chief Mark Yamada, Assistant Chief Carmen Fasciolo, as well as Dr. Santiago from the Department of Health and Human Services. We're also joined by Captain Stacy Flynn from MCPD, as well as Captain Kevin Sullivan, also from MCPD, and the Acting Captain Kevin Conroy and Dornay Hill, Acting Director of Trauma and Crisis Services with DHHS. With that, I will turn it over to Susan and Linda to just tee this up and walk us through the packet, and then we will hear from this esteemed panel.
Sure. As you know, mass shootings is a very large and complicated issue. It's multifaceted, and quite frankly, the Joint Committee could talk on this all week, really. So we tried to narrow the discussion a little bit to things that the community can help try to control and help prevent. And it goes by some commonalities in those who engage in mass shootings. I believe up to 70% of them have some domestic violence component in it, intimate partner violence or a parent or a child or something like that. And also a significant percentage of them engage in pre-attack behaviors that are exhibited to the community that people pick up on. And to that end, some of the things that we'd like to focus on today are extreme risk protection orders, which are also known as the red flag laws that allow people who are can have a nexus with a person who's a potentially violent individual, and they think that that person is displaying behaviors that they might harm others or harm themselves, and they have a firearm. They can apply for civil order to have that firearm turned in or confiscated. The other major piece I wanted to touch on is the behavioral threat assessment model. in schools. This is an evidence-based best practice, and it can help try to identify some individuals before they commit acts of violence. You've mentioned some of the other things about violent crime increasing, mass shootings increasing, and also the preemption of by state law that, you know, they have much more of control over any of the laws dealing with firearms. We do have a very large panel today. I thought it would be helpful if you could start with the Sheriff's Office with Chief Deputy Wee. And he does have a PowerPoint presentation that either I can share or he can. Let me see if I can make that happen.
All right, thank you, Susan. Yes, if you can try to see if we can share that.
Let me see.
Well, Susan's setting that up. First of all, good afternoon to everyone. Good afternoon, council members, some of the public safety stakeholders, as others on this call. What I'd like to do is I plan to start by just giving a real brief refresher for those that are not real familiar with the Extreme Risk Protective Orders. ERPOs are red flag bill, or red flag laws rather. Go to the next slide, please. The ERPO law, as many of you know, came out of the 2018 session. It's been in effect since October 1st of 2018. And certain things to note about the ERPOs are that the petitioners listed can either be healthcare professionals, law enforcement members, spouses, cohabitants, relatives, intimate partners, or legal guardians. And actually, before I get too far into this, I will say again, my name is Chief Deputy Maxwell Wee. I run operations for Sheriff Hopkin, and I'm very fortunate to be able to represent him today. And I appreciate the kind comments from Councilman Keck. One thing to note when you look at the ERPOs, not just in Montgomery County, but also statewide, that the majority of petitioners for these ERPOs are police officers. And that certainly shows true here in Montgomery County. The Sheriff's Office, we work very closely with Montgomery County Police Department, and this presentation, I believe we're going to complement each other, primarily out of our Family Justice Center, but with all the members of the Police Department. What we also see is that ERPOs obtained by healthcare professionals tend to be very low, and there's a few reasons for that. One reason is the additional requirements to testify in court. There's certain follow-up requirements, not just initially getting that ERPO, but the follow-up requirements to be able to testify in court. I did meet with Sheriff Hopkin prior to this presentation, and he informed me that both Sheriff Hopkin as well as many other folks are working on future solutions to look at drafting a statewide bill. So there's a committee that's looking at that. Because as we're going to see, a common theme, and I think it's already been touched on, is mental health plays a large role in these orders and these situations. So again, I'm not going to read every portion of this slide, but noting that the petitioners in these matters need to sign, swear under oath with the penalty of perjury, that they file these within the district court, either in front of a judge or after hours in front of a district court commissioner. And it's important to note that the information in an ERPO is confidential, and it may not be divulged other than court order. Next slide, please. Now, I will add that for the purposes of educational research, educational facilities such as Johns Hopkins University actually may access certain portions of this data for research purposes. But it's very important to recognize that only aggregate data to maintain confidentiality may be reported. So that's something that we see going forward as we look at trends and those types of things. Again, similar with other types of orders, if the petitioner is acting in good faith, they're immune from civil or criminal, they have civil or criminal immunity in these cases. Again, if a commissioner or judge finds reasonable grounds to believe there's an immediate and present danger of personal injury to the petitioner or the respondent by possessing a firearm, they may have an ERPO issued, ordering the respondent to surrender any firearms or ammunition that may be in that respondent's possession. Now, again, it's important to note that when we look at some of the statewide numbers and the county numbers, and you'll see some of that later in the slide, especially over the last year, there's actually been an increase in not a decrease in these ERPOs. And I believe a large factor, again, is the mental health component. It's important to note that many of the ERPOs involve suicidal subjects that are immediate threats to themselves. Some of these subjects have been previously diagnosed, many have not. But the one thing they share in common is the access to firearms in many of these incidents. Again, from a process standpoint, if an order is issued by a commissioner, the commissioner would forward a copy of the petition to include the interim ERPO to the appropriate law enforcement agency for service. Again, in Montgomery County, oftentimes the petitioners are the Montgomery County Police Department, and then they oftentimes will effectuate service. We will be the record holders, and we work very closely with them. And again, law enforcement officers shall immediately serve these ERPOs, and upon service, make a return to the court within 2 hours. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, the district court may issue these orders just like the commissioners as a temporary order. So a commissioner issuing an order is an interim order. When a district court judge issues it, however, it's a temporary order. Very similar to our protection orders, our interim and temporary protection orders. And one key note is that Maryland is currently the most effective state in the country. And now, why do I say that? It's because the ERPOs, the red flag laws specific to Maryland, they have the designation of protective orders. So this allows those hearings 24 hours a day, 7 days a week through either judges or district court commissioners. And that's an important thing to consider when you look at some of the success in other states with their red flag laws. These cases, whether they're interim or temporary, upon their hearing, they may go to a final ERPO order. In looking at the numbers, and again, this will show up here shortly on the slide, we see roughly, I believe it's roughly 50% going to final order, or a little less than that, which is consistent with other types of domestic violence orders. Now, one additional component of the Maryland red flag law, or the ERPO law, is the ability to get an emergency evaluation under Health General article. Now, of course, you can get an emergency evaluation without an ERPO, but the ability to do this allows law enforcement officers to transport an evaluee to one of the nearest emergency rooms, emergency facilities, to get that immediate mental health treatment, which, again, as I've said, and I think we're going to see a common theme, is one of the critical aspects of dealing in some of these cases. Next slide, please. Again, the ability under the law, the state's attorney's office or other law enforcement officers may apply for a search warrant for firearms or ammunition if they have PC or probable cause to believe a respondent has failed to surrender firearms. And this does occur occasionally. I think we might touch on that later in the presentation. Again, there is also a due process portion of this law where the return of firearms upon request from a respondent, a proper return request, and providing the law enforcement agency verifies that respondents are not prohibited, firearms and ammunition may be returned upon the end of the court order. There are other ways we can transfer firearms as well. That we can transfer firearms to a licensed firearms dealer or to another person. And if there's a violation or fail to comply with the ERPO, it is currently a misdemeanor, which of course is 90 days or 1 year. And again, law enforcement, we're directed to arrest a subject if they're in violation of an ERPO. Next slide, please. What I have up here, if you haven't seen one recently, again, here's a petition. Showing on the left is what a petition for an ERPO would look like. Again, most commonly, these are filled out by an investigating law enforcement officer. And they would state what the immediate danger is, list the types of firearms if known, and they would present this before, again, a district court commissioner or judge. Next slide, please. If an interim order is issued, this is what it would look like. Again, it would have the respondent's information, very, very similar to interim, temporary, and final domestic violence protective orders. It has descriptive information and orders the respondent to surrender any firearms or ammunition, and puts them on notice that they're prohibited from purchasing or possessing firearms and ammunition for the duration of the order. And again, there is a court date to allow the respondent the ability to give their side. Next slide, please. Now, this is a copy of an emergency evaluation specific to an ERPO. Again, there's a couple different types of emergency evaluations. There's a standard one we see at a health general that a concerned citizen, family member, law enforcement officer, social worker can obtain. This one, again, is based on an ERPO, but also allows a law enforcement officer to take that person into custody, transport them to the nearest emergency room so that they can get that critical treatment they may need. Next slide. These are some of the statistics I noted. So when you look at this slide, again, this is from Montgomery County. So in calendar year 2020, we had, between interim and temporary orders, we had 113 orders obtained. Of those orders, 47 went to final ERPO. And looking at this year so far, calendar year 2021, we have 36 orders that have been applied for. We have a total of 17 orders. So we're tracking these orders, and we see, again, looking at 2020 during the pandemic, we did not see a decrease in orders, unfortunately, in the county. Next slide, please. For those of you that don't have it, that's my contact information. And I will note that some additional attachments, that when I talked about the healthcare professionals and how they are not normally the petitioners, even though in many ways they may be the first persons that see these issues, right? See these concerns if they're treating somebody or they have somebody contacting. And as I mentioned, Chair Popkin and another statewide committee are looking at. But with the goal of hopefully getting psychiatrists, psychologists, and social workers more involved in the process, one thing that would be more consistent with the social justice model as we move towards reimagining responses with public safety. If I could get the next slide, please. Oh, that might be, okay, that's it. Sorry for this slide. Well, I think in your packet, what I wanted to reference before I conclude this is there was ERP information sent to, I believe it was 26,000 licensed Maryland clinicians on or about March of this year. Why do I reference that? Well, it was important. That came out of the Governor's Commission on Suicide Prevention. And as many of you on this meeting are well aware, and I referenced it a couple times, how mental health plays such a critical aspect in these situations. Again, this is in your packet. And educational information on what an ERPO was sent out to a number of physicians, as well as information on safe storage of firearms, and other frequently asked questions to really educate physicians. And that's what's a benefit of this council meeting and some of the other things that Councilmember Albornoz brought up, as well as I know what Councilmember Sidney Katz is aware of, is that education portion for the citizens, for the residents of the county, that there are mechanisms out there that might be able to be very helpful in preventing violence. That is really my structured part of this presentation. I certainly am happy to answer any questions that anybody may have, and I know that our county police partners are getting into a lot of other portions of the presentation.
If it's okay with the chairs, if we could just move to the police portion of this and then maybe take questions after.
All right, thank you.
Yes, please do that.
So good afternoon to the council, to the committee chairs, and everyone on the council, and all the guests. What Sheriff Deputy Chief Wee has described in response to extreme risk protection orders is it was well done. It's a process that I think has proven its worth in Maryland. I do believe personally it has saved lives. I think it continues to save lives. I think we have seen many cases that we have been involved in that have we've been able to remove guns from homes where individuals who were having a mental episode had clear access to weapons that put their families in fear and also others in the community. And I think this is an example of us really trying to be preventative in many measures in order to keep our community safe with the unpredictability of an individual who has access to weapons, who may be willing to harm others as well as themselves. I am going to pass the baton to my team, Assistant Chief Dinesh Patel, as well as Assistant Chief Yamada, and as well as Assistant Chief Fasciola, to really talk about the process from our side of the shop here at the police department, where there is many moving parts to these to the questions that you all have. Unfortunately, I need to step off in a little while, but I find this to be very important. But I will pass the baton to them to share the discussion amongst the council committees here today. So thank you all again for allowing us to share.
Thanks, Chief, and good afternoon to members of the Public Safety Committee and our guests on this meeting. My name is Dinesh Patel, Assistant Chief Police in charge of the Investigative Services Bureau, and in our room this afternoon here today is Assistant Chief Mark Yamada, Captain Kevin Sullivan of the Special Operations Division, Captain Stacy Flynn, our Director of Community Engagement, and Acting Director of the Criminal Investigations Division, Lieutenant Kevin Conroy, who will be updating you on kind of how we get involved with ERPOs and some of the statistics over recent history. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Kevin.
Good afternoon, everyone. Lieutenant Conroy, glad to be here. Special thanks to Deputy Sheriff Lee. That was an outstanding presentation with the ERPOs. I mean, he pretty much covered from top to bottom what we do. I want to share, I don't know if we can put the slides up there for the county, for our staff, reference the ERPOs, and we'll start in the year 2018 when the ERPO law first came into effect. If you can, it should be in your packet.
Yes, it's in everybody's packet. I don't have it as a PowerPoint. It's not something I can share.
Okay, no problem. So what we do here, reference the ERPOs, we divide them in two different categories. Between our Criminal Investigative Division and our Special Victims Investigative Division. Our SVID, Special Victims, they handle all the ERPOs that are domestic related between the partners or whatever, so they're going to do that. Our CID, Criminal Investigative Division, we handle all the other ones that are not domestic related. Like I said, if it's a neighbor, another friend or something like that who's threatening to commit suicide or something like that. In 2018, we had a total of 11 ERPOs. We seized 16 firearms. 2019, we had a total of 43 ERPOs, and we seized 28 firearms. In 2020, our highest year, 34 total, 40 firearms seized, and up to date, we got nine ERPOs and 22 firearms seized. What we want to do, my detectives do here in CID, SVID, we want to be able to prevent and help people who are victims. We want to make sure that we're there in the time of need for them to be able to prevent a massacre or them hurting themselves or somebody else. And it all starts with the patrol officer who takes the call, goes out to the house, talks to the complainant, the family member, whoever wants to check the welfare of that individual. And then we assess the case. And if that individual needs to be mentally evaluated, and if we hear that he has weapons in the house, we'll try to get the weapons in the house and get him the help he needs. But like I said, that's our number one priority, is helping people out so we're able to prevent some of these stories that you hear in the paper and the news all the time. And I'll be happy. Anybody have any questions for me, I'll be happy to answer any questions. And like I said, we work hand in hand with the Sheriff's Department. They help us out all the time. We help them out all the time. And like I said, it's definitely a good thing that this law came into effect because we've saved a lot of lives and helped a lot of people.
Just really quick before we go into the next presentation, of the firearms confiscated, how many of them were legally registered versus how many were not? Do you guys have that data?
I don't, but usually it's the firearms are legally bought, registered to the people. Like I said, sometime in IRPOs, we don't get any firearms. Sometimes we've had IRPOs that we've recovered like over 40 weapons. It's either handguns, shotguns, or whatever the number, but usually they're registered to that person.
Got it.
Now, I'm sorry, I was remiss in not mentioning our colleague that's not in the office with us here right now. Assistant Chief Carmen Vaciello is also our new civilian is also on the Zoom this afternoon with us.
Thanks, Chief.
Great, thank you. What's the next presentation, Susan?
I don't know if the police wanted to talk at all about the behavioral threat assessment, or are they just here for questions on that? And if they're just here for questions, could we move to Dr. Santiago and get a little bit more about response and trauma and what he's been seeing?
So, Susan, we'll certainly, we're happy, Captain Flynn here is happy and able to talk about the threat assessment process, at probably a high level, to keep things moving. But however, the committee would be, if you want a quick presentation, an overview, we do that, or we just answer questions, however you'd like it done.
It might be helpful if you could just give a very brief overview of what that looks like for the schools.
All right, hello everybody, Stacy Flynn. So basically the Behavioral Threat Assessment Plan is a collaborative effort between MCPS, mental health partners such as HHS, and the police department. It's a team of members made up, there's a representative at every school. We typically average from 12 to 25 assessments per year. The usual resolution for these assessments is that somebody is referred to the crisis center. They might be EAPed, which is taken to the hospital for the mental evaluation. Sometimes there is an IRPO component, but the purpose of it is to identify anyone involved at the school that may harm other people at the school. Essentially, it could be a student, it could be a parent, it could be an employee. It's a wide variety of folks that are assessed. An assessment team comes together that includes an administrator at the school, a law enforcement partner, a mental health partner, as well as a teacher. And we have a conversation, we have a meeting, assess the situation, discuss it. We are allowed to share criminal history about the individual. However, that criminal history will not go into anyone's record, and it's also not to be disseminated outside the group. So that's kind of one of the things that the law enforcement component is able to help with, because it is a factor in making a determination on the best way to help people. The goal of the behavioral threat assessment is essentially to assess and intervene with anyone that poses a threat to the safety of anybody at the schools. That's a brief synopsis.
Great, I appreciate that. I didn't know if any of the judges wanted to speak to their respective experiences with IRPOs.
Well, this is Jim Bonner from the Circuit Court, and since the jurisdiction is with the District Court, I've not had any experience with any particular case. So, Sherry, sorry, but I'm kicking it over to you.
Okay. So Judge Bonifant is correct. The original jurisdiction is in the District Court or the Commissioners. Thank you to Chief Deputy for all the statistics. And I think that his presentation and his statistics really sort of paint the picture of what we see. Just to sort of give you an idea of what happens in the courtroom, The police are the petitioners, but they are represented by the county attorney's office, and they have specific county attorneys who come into court and do the legal work, and they call the police officer as the witness to do the testifying. So it's not simply police officers coming in. The county has really been on top of these ERPOs in assigning particular county attorneys to stay on top of it. And along with that, these county attorneys, because they do talk to the police officers and are in constant contact with them, and the sheriffs have also been able to give the court a heads up when there are individual persons who may be a danger to themselves or maybe a danger to the courts, and we may need to have extra bailiffs, extra sheriffs. So it's really been a group effort with the police department and the sheriff's department and frankly the county attorney's office in working on all this. So the interims are all done at the commissioners, and that's so that we can have 24/7, 365 coverage. But if it's anytime between 8:30 and 4:30, these are done in front of the judge. And then whenever we have some interims and the full hearings, like I said, there are attorneys involved. And so everything, everyone is always very prepared. The police and the sheriffs, but more often the police come in and have all of their full information and are extremely prepared for these hearings. So I think that I maybe personally denied one ERPO, and it was a citizen complaint, and it was someone who didn't understand what the ERPO was. She just wanted her husband's guns taken away, and that could be done through a protective order. It wasn't a situation for an ERPO, but I can't think of any situations where the police have come in seeking an ERPO and they've been denied. I don't want to swear to that, but the police have a very good handle on what is going on in the community and what needs to be done in the community and when to bring these cases. So other than that, if you have any procedural questions, I'm happy to answer them, but the chief, certainly both chiefs, everyone really went over all the statistics. And seeing none, I'll mute myself.
Thank you. No, that was a very comprehensive presentation. And obviously this is, again, as behavioral health issues are rising, we're deeply concerned, and the level of stress that's on families right now is increasing exponentially because of a variety of different factors. So it's something that we're definitely keeping a close eye on.
At this point, then, I didn't know if Dr. Santiago and Dornay Hill would like to speak.
Yes, I'd like to provide a little bit of a perspective from a behavioral health response. And one way to organize our thoughts is around the prevention area, and the other one is the intervention area. What do I mean by prevention? I think we've already heard here that the reality that we live with in this county and in this country is a proliferation of firearms, and we haven't found solutions as to how to bring the amount of firearms. In fact, they're increasing, but how do you control that? In the absence of answers, then we do need to be prepared from a mental health perspective, because as we know, many of those who are at risk of suicide or are contemplating it, increasingly they have access to firearms, and that's a method of choice. But not only in suicide attempts, but also if there's conflict in the family, often firearms are used to resolve them. And we know that the increase in the deaths in this country is many of them occur in domestic situations and in suicides. So the conversation around the use of ERPO is interesting from a prevention side. Those who are serving in as therapists, psychologists, working with families and with individuals with mental health needs often become aware that there are firearms. I'm not aware that our workers in behavioral health and crisis services have used ERPO. I know of at least one instance. Perhaps there have been more over the years, but this, as we all know, this is a relatively new law. But that's a question to ask. What is the responsibility of our workers who become aware of individuals who have said pretty clearly that they have access to firearms and they may use them, and they confide that to a mental health worker. On the intervention side, that's a topic that we're talking about. What do we do in cases of mass shootings or shootings themselves? How do we use the red flag laws? And I think in that sense, we have some tools in our kit in behavioral health, and I have Dornay Hill, and we've also invited Patrick Campbell, who works in emergency response, and I'd like both of them to comment on some of these tools that we have. For example, we have the VASAP program, Victims Assistance Program for those who are experiencing violence in the home, domestic violence. We also have the mobile crisis outreach teams as well, who oftentimes are involved together with police in responding to situations where there's a risk of weapons. There's also the collaboration between the CIT and the police department, the crisis intervention team, and our MCOTS, mobile crisis outreach teams. These are all tools that we have to respond to these situations that we're discussing today. So I'd like to ask Dornay to elaborate on any of these points, and Patrick also, in how you view the collaboration in a disaster situation, perhaps even in a mass shooting, and how you work with our mental health teams.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Santiago. Thank you, council members and everybody on this committee. So we have diligently been involved in situations where there has been mass casualties of natural or unnatural consequences. We work hand in hand with our shelter and community response and preparedness team. We send out teams that are ethnically and community based until the disaster has been handled or disseminated to a point of stability. In Silver Spring several years ago, we were there on site 24/7 for weeks at a time, helping the community with their response and mental health needs, not just on site, but also at the crisis center, offering psychiatric appointments, long-term therapy through adult behavioral health, and different programs like that. Patrick has several different teams that he can speak of that respond across the county, and there's a behavioral health component in every single team across the county where we are called out with Patrick's people, with Red Cross, and we are there to deal with whatever the situation may be. Our victim assistant and sexual assault program deals with family members and individuals who have been victims or their family members have been victims of homicide or severe trauma, and we offer compensation therapy, group therapy, and intervention as well, and psychiatry. Patrick, do you want to jump in about the different teams that we use for emergency preparedness?
Sure. Thank you, Dornay, Dr. Santiago, and Council. Part of the role that I lead is obviously in our mass care. A lot of pieces fit into it. Everybody, of course, thinks sheltering. But one of the parts we've been focusing on the past year has been our family unification and family assistance centers, which is the specific response to any mass casualty incident. The Office of Emergency Management has been a key partner in helping us develop this plan. And we were charging full speed ahead right before COVID hit. And now we've been revisiting and updating our plans based on the lessons learned over the past couple of years, figuring out how we can also create more virtual components based on our experiences of the past year. But a big part of it is in the event of any significant mass casualty incident. This could be transportation, could be mass shooting or anything like that. Initially, there's always going to be a response from HHS, and we pull in our various partners from American Red Cross. Within HHS, we have various program areas that lead sections of it, but making sure that we're initially creating a safe space for the community. In the very early stages of whether we're taking victims, we assume sometimes we might be taking care of two types of victims. Those directly affected, but also the families themselves that may have had a loss, but yet because of the limitations of when we can let a family know about a loss of life, we have to find a way we can take care of them in that period. So we're prepared for both that. We prepare how do we take care of victims who are maybe in the building but still living. How do we take care of the family members that are waiting to find out what happened? So we're able to deploy both, set up a service center to take care of those family members that are waiting for the news, and set up a separate space for those families that temporarily kind of need to be held together while the police are continuing their investigation, somewhere where we can provide them the mental health services, but also in the very early stages provide very basic care like food, water, and shelter. That kind of stage them and show them that the county's there and present for them. We bring a mixture of staff in, both mental health, social workers, just and other competent staff that are very good at just being present for people. We would also engage our emotional care and support volunteers and other types of groups like our COAD. So we have a lot of partners we can pull in to meet whatever the specific needs are. But the truth is, for a lot of it, is it just creating that space and also making sure that we're protecting them from media intrusions and making sure they're getting the right care at the right time. Because sometimes critical care isn't needed right off the bat because they're in shock or they're waiting for news. So we provide multiple tiers of care.
And as you all know, mobile crisis is available 24/7, 365. So we are usually the first on the scene. We can start giving some mental health intervention as needed, boots on the ground in the moment.
Thank you. That's really helpful. Let me ask a few questions just for our general population. Say you have a loved one who's in crisis and is, just having a rough go of it in some form or fashion. There's a firearm involved. Who do you report that to? Who would you call? How would you call the police? Would you call a crisis line? How would you, report a family member? And candidly, the police-involved shooting that occurred just a couple of weeks ago involved a young man who was in distress, who his family knew was in distress. That case is under investigation, clearly. I don't want to exactly equate that to this discussion, but in general terms, if we have a loved one who's in distress, what should we do, Dr. Santiago or Dornay or law enforcement, particularly if we know, again, a gun is involved?
I'll let Dornay respond, and then I have some comments.
Sure.
Dornay,
sure.
you want to start?
Sure, absolutely. So if there's a weapon involved, there's a couple things that we do. If there's other members or persons that are calling that live in the home, we ask questions like, is the weapon locked? Is it secured? Where is it kept? Is there ammunition to go with it? We use our counterparts in the police to ask, is this gun legal? Has this person have any history of brandishing a weapon or threatening persons with a weapon? And that's how we determine who would be the initial, would it be a joint effort? Would it be police first to secure the scene and then we're going to come? Or is it just a police response? So we look at our records and we do a lot of gathering information from the family and from other resources, our records and historical data, as well as the police records and historical information.
I mean, actually further upstream, not when there's actually an incident happening in real time, but if you're concerned that a loved one is in some type of crisis before, a 911 call is made, who would be the best person to refer those folks to? Obviously we're having a substantial problem right now with the amount of calls that are rise to the level of clinical need, and there's a bed capacity. There's just a volume capacity right now. But what would be the best resource that somebody, or if you're concerned about a neighbor or somebody in your community that appears to be in distress, maybe has made comments on social media that are alarming or of concern, what is the best resource to provide to those folks? Where should we direct them to?
I would say you can always start with the crisis center. We're 24/7 phone number. We also are available for walk-ins. So we see families and triage with them and brainstorm with them all the time, in person or over the phone, about next steps and gathering information and what would they like to see happen. What are their hopes for their loved one or neighbor? What are their concerns about if we become involved, or if the police are involved, what are their concerns? What are the benefits of having us go? Of course, 240-777-4000. They can always call us, and we take calls like that every day, and we welcome those calls so that we can brainstorm and triage. There's been times where we've been able to get someone in to see our psychiatrist and get them an appointment, have them see a therapist via telehealth or in person, and be able to really do that prevention work that can happen prior to an incident, hopefully.
And then just another random question, but not random, but just the background checks. We all hear about background checks. I actually have no idea what's in a background check because I've never purchased a firearm myself. If somebody could speak to what is tracked when a background check is done, and is there any analysis or search of any sort of behavioral health issues during that check? I don't know if anybody has an answer to that.
So this is Dinesh. In relation to gun ownership or
gun ownership.
So there's a process with the Maryland State Police, and I don't have all the intricacies of what's involved, but both from what the state of Maryland does and federal requirements, we can certainly get you that information. It's not something that the county police department is involved in, but there's a both from a licensing standpoint and training requirements from the state, as well as filling out, not just filling out the documents, but the processes that occur with the state police and the federal government. And if you'd like, I can follow up and get you what that looks like.
That would be great, Chief Patil, because I think, the other thought that I have is, as people purchasing these weapons, it's not just for safety and security. In some cases, it's to cause harm. And because people are in crisis, I wonder if there's an opportunity to provide some level of information on where to go if people are in crisis, let them know of services that are available to them as they're purchasing their firearms, if somebody happens to be purchasing it for nefarious reasons or to harm themselves or others. Some other layer of information or support that we can provide people so that they realize the purchase of the gun shouldn't be that solution, because as we know, it creates its own set of problems to have a firearm in someone's home. That's something I'd like to follow up on as well. Dr. Stoddard, we haven't heard from you yet. You and I have had a couple conversations about this issue generally, and I know that I've been always immensely impressed. In fact, we've gone through some, when I was the director of the Recreation Department, some of the incidents that we essentially practiced in a sense as a community, or mass shooting events at large gatherings and that sort of a thing. Could you speak a little bit about, and Mr. Campbell spoke a little bit to this, but maybe expand on, from an emergency preparedness standpoint, what should we be advising the community? God forbid, these are just becoming too common, but what should people be looking for? What should they do? What steps could they take if God forbid, they find themselves in a situation in which there's somebody involved in an incident like this?
Councilman Albornoz, I'm sorry to interrupt, but this is Jim Bonifant. This has been most informative for me. and I'm sure for Judge Koch as well. But I have to leave. I have a meeting set up that was a lot of people, not as distinguished as this group, but they're waiting for me right now. So
no problem,
and
Judge.
Dr. Stoddard, it's actually nice to see you again, sir. All
Judge,
right. Thank you very much.
Same problem, Judge. Thank you both very much.
No problem.
All right, thank you.
Thanks. What a great.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Council Vice President Albernas. So yes, we do, and I know that police could talk about this too. We do community training. It's called often called CRAZE, so it's civilian response to active shooter events. And we also do Be the Help Until Help Arrives training for the public, which is largely less specifically focused on active shooter events, but it's more all hazards, meaning that it's you know, what information you're going to have to provide to a 911 operator depending on the kind of incident that may occur, what you know, how you can, you know, stop a bleed in a case where there may be an injury, whether it's a gunshot or some other, you know, stabbing or just a trauma injury of someone falls on a trail, for example. And we also do Stop the Bleed training, which is a more expanded version of that Be the Help Until Help Arrives, specifically focused on really caring for traumatic injuries. And I'm happy to report we've actually made some progress in partnership with some of the county partners in particular. So in Montgomery County Public Schools, there are now Stop the Bleed kits deployed in all of our schools, all of our public schools, I should say. And, you know, larger kits in high schools, some kids in middle school, some kids in elementary schools. And we are actually working with MCPS on a curriculum where high school students will be actually taught Stop the Bleed moving forward. You know, while we often think, you know, obviously exposing young children, in this case, young adults with our high schoolers to this kind of thing, you know, we don't want to traumatize them, but obviously, you know, being able to stop a bleed, whether it's a, you know, an accident that occurs in your house or you know, God forbid, a mass shooting that one might experience. It's just a common skill that we're trying to have more across all of our communities. And we believe that, you know, including in the high school curriculum ultimately would be a great avenue to get more people aware of how to help their fellow neighbors out if they were to experience any sort of incident, whether it's mass shooting or something else. Those kits are already deployed in MCPS, as I alluded to. We also secured Homeland Security grant funding to put them into all the county buildings. And so we're actually working with the Department of General Services actively right now to get those kits in the relevant stations deployed. And so as we do that, there will be obviously associated training both for the public and for our county employees to be able to utilize the resources that are in those kits, so that we can, you know, understand how to apply a tourniquet, how to apply a bandage, you know, things of those nature where, you know, we want people to feel empowered about situations like mass shootings in the response phase, so they don't feel, you know, they don't want, we want them to feel exclusively like victims. We want them to feel like they're empowered to be able to take some control of the situation and to look out for themselves until our law enforcement and emergency services professionals arrive. And so we include all of those elements in our sort of countywide exercises. Obviously over the last year, we've done less of the in-person exercising for reasons that will be obvious to everyone. We're actually looking to get back into those beginning this fall and into the spring, recognizing that we can't go much longer without doing some of these more broad-based activities. We know as more people participate in societal activities, whether it's, you know, going to in-person religious services or in-person education, the more people are together together, obviously, unfortunately, those are also opportunities for negative things to happen. We want to be able to make sure that they're prepared and capable of responding to those sorts of incidents. And so those training courses and community opportunities, as well as the exercises and training opportunities for county employees and county responders will be reinitiated over the next several months to really remember exactly all of those things that we've already heard today in today's session about the other challenges that we face outside of COVID-19. So
thank you, Dr. Stoddard. No, it's crushingly depressing that we even need that. But obviously it's practical and the reality that we're in right now, which is just insane. But it's where we find ourselves. I guess just I had two other questions, and then I know several of my colleagues had to jump off, but Chairman Katz and Councilmember Rice, if you have any questions, please feel free to text me and let me know. But I think just kind of rounding this out, we talked about preventative measures, we talked about intervention, but the practical reality is until our federal government addresses some of the underlying issues that are leading to so many guns being purchased and entering into our streets, we're all going to just be literally triaging. I mean, that's what Dr. Stoddard just described, is triaging the situation that we find ourselves in. And so as local jurisdictions, even one with as progressive and in the state of Maryland, aggressive laws, we're not immune to this issue. And you know, we'd be naive to think that this couldn't happen here. And although I'm confident we're taking as many steps as possible to be preventative, it's obviously a constant struggle. Chief Jones, last couple questions are for you and Assistant Chief Patil and your team. I know that we've invested resources in being proactive in searching through social media, looking for bad actors, looking for people that may have an axe to grind over some issue. And obviously the level of vitriol and hate that we're seeing is so common now that it's hard to break through. But can you talk a little bit about, from a proactive standpoint, mining social media, particularly around incidents of racial discrimination and religious discrimination, where we are with those efforts and any light you can shed on identifying those bad actors?
Yes, Councilmember Albanaz, it is true that, of course, when we hear threats, or we are actually being very proactive in many events across our county as relates to some of the rhetoric that might center around some violence threats for events that are occurring in the county in a variety of different venues or locations. When we had, for example, the issues with the Asian community recently, we monitored extensively to make sure that and tagged certain words on social media and looking for activity that might be occurring in the county. That gives us an opportunity to be proactive. And it also, those units have been very helpful. I will tell you, over the past couple of years when we've had school threats that have been, and when we work with our school resource officers to help identify sometimes students who might be going through a mental health crisis, who are making threats for another reason, and might have, and the cases need to be investigated to determine whether or not the individual does have a weapon in order to carry out the said threat. And the good news is these units from the digital information unit is really proactive to be able to follow some social media sites, people's some of their public sites that we're monitoring to see what is the temperature in the room, you might say. And it helps investigators as they're working towards leads in order to be able to assess those situations and to eliminate that. So I will tell you, as we all know, in the world of technology, that world is growing. And we want to be able to continue to monitor. I'll let Assistant Chief Patil, because he often gives me updates about all of the resources he thinks he needs. And there's no doubt in my mind that this unit is one of them that we think will probably need to grow in the coming future because of the growth of our county. But I'll turn it over to Assistant Chief Patil and allow him to elaborate on that a little bit more if he has anything else to share.
Sure, thanks, Chief. I mean, I think across the board we see technology having an impact or a relation to almost every case, every certainly threat assessment that we do, So, information certainly is power, and being able to, glean that information, whether from open source, entities or, digital forensics that we do, that footprint of what we need, in the future will certainly continue to grow. Our digital intelligence analysis, is very much driven around, threats or known situations that are emerging. It's not just a wide net thrown out there kind of for, in general. We look at, very specific things, but it's also not completely, based on the way that different profiles or accounts are set up. It's not a catch-all, right? So, it is a tool in the big scheme of things, along with investigations, just detectives going and knocking on doors when we get a threat and having an intervention or a conversation with somebody that either in crisis, or many of the times people will say things online that maybe they didn't, they didn't exactly mean, but we quickly intervene. We will work with federal partners if need be, and regionally, through different, agencies throughout the area. Much of what happens here is regionally based, and but a lot of it just is chasing down the information, however we can get it, and then being able to intervene into whether it's something as as distinct as an ERPO, or ERPO, or again, just having a conversation, or letting parents know and sitting down with a student, that may have made threats. We deal with student threat cases almost, I'd say, certainly on a monthly basis, not almost on a weekly basis. Our criminal investigations division kind of calls an all stop and just puts all hands on deck for those situations. So wherever we can get information that'll lead us to being able to intervene and either stop a cycle or just get somebody the help they need, we continue to seek those resources.
And Assistant Chief Patil, how is that data tracked? Do we track those trends on a macro level, or is that more organic?
I'd say it's probably more organic. What will typically happen is that we will get information that comes in. I'd say routinely a parent or a student will see information on social media posted somewhere where somebody will say that they intend on taking some sort of violent action in the school or something, and then we start backtracking that information. We partner with, I'm stealing Captain Flint's thunder a little bit here, but we work with MCPS. We have a very structured communication, linkage with the people involved to make sure that everybody's on the same page, that we, quickly figure out, what the threat is, who the person is, to the best of our ability, and then again, intervening. So it's not something where I'm sure we could do some hand searching to pull that up. But because you may get a dispatch call for service about a threat, or you may just get an email from a parent or MCPS. So if you come in different ways, so sometimes tracking the number could be a little challenging because of different venues that may come in. But it is certainly a significant part of the caseload for our criminal investigation division.
Okay, thank you. Final point, just in one of our first orientations here in the council, we went through an active shooter drill, and it was terrifying. Just frankly, imagining the different scenarios that can happen within the council and this body. And, just in my 2.5 years in office, I've gotten some pretty scary messages, as have probably all of my colleagues multiple times. And so we live in a very charged society, and as things begin to reopen, we just can't forget that we have to be vigilant across the board, and all places of business, certainly our schools, all need to have plans and need to think proactively about this. If God forbid an incident like this happens, that we take all reasonable steps in advance, both from a mental health standpoint and a prevention standpoint, to address the holistic needs of individuals that are in crisis, but then the logistical issues that may be present within places of business, places of worship, you name it. It's just something we all have to now bear in mind, given where we are as a country at this moment. So this has been enlightening and helpful on a lot of different levels. And obviously, let's pray that we don't have to reconvene after an incident. But I think it was productive to at least think through what systems are currently in place. And we do have systems in place, as we've heard, and I want our public to understand and know. But I'll just leave you with this thought, which is, Dornay put it perfectly. If you have a loved one who you suspect or are concerned about that needs help, call our crisis intervention line. Dornay, can you give that number?
Absolutely. 240-777-4000, 4000.
Thank you.
We're open 24/7.
Great. And so don't be shy, don't be bashful. And you know, we have to take care of this collectively as a community. So thank you, Ms. Farag. Appreciate the discussion and conversation this afternoon. And Chairman Katz would like to say a few words to close this out as well.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'm going to be extremely brief. First off, thank you for all of your questions. Thank you to all the panelists for your answers. I think this joint committee meeting today has proven once again that public safety encounters many, many different departments, and many, many different areas need to work together to keep our community safe, and in every way we can possibly do it. So I think that the information was very necessary for us to receive it, and I think we need, candidly, updates periodically on how we are doing, and if there's things that we need to change or additional resources that might be needed. And I turn it back over to you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for calling for this joint committee.
Thank you. Well, this closes us out. Our council will be on recess now. That doesn't mean, by the way, for those watching at home, that we stop working. There's still a lot of meetings and a lot of stuff that goes on. We just don't have any public sessions in committee or as full council. But we do look forward to coming back, and we hope that all of you get a little bit of rest and reprieve if you haven't already taken a vacation yet, and we appreciate everyone's leadership. Thank you. With that, we are adjourned.
Thank you.